Morning, everyone. We'll give just a minute or two to get everybody up and running, and we'll get going. Hope you're doing fine. Trying to keep up with the admitting people, which is a nice problem. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody. My name is John Warren. I am Director of Choral Activities at Syracuse University and New York ACDA State President. And welcome to our second August conference session, and we're thrilled to have you with us. I recognize many of you from long time, but several of you from our June conference too. And we had great response there to our panel. So we're so excited to have all 5 of our panel members back. And I think that's a great way to go. And so we want to get them the chance to talk. Let me introduce my wonderful friend and colleague, Doreen Freiling, who has done immense amount of work this summer to get the June conference and this conference together. So brava, Doreen, and thank you so much. And take it away.
Thank you so much, John. Good morning, everybody. We are so glad that you are here with us. The way that we have framed this morning's workshop is as follows. We are going to have our 5 panelists, which are people from all levels, elementary through collegiate and into lifelong, from all parts of New York State. And they're going to come together and talk through some big issues that we are dealing with in reopening our schools and reopening our choirs. And I'm going to moderate that discussion with them, and just the 5 of them are going to be involved in that conversation. But at 11 o'clock, what we're going to do is we're going to send you to 5 different Zooms broken down by level. So you can decide if you want to join one of those rooms or if you want to spend half of your time in one room and half of your time in another room. But those will be broken up by age groups, basically. So that will be, there will be an elementary room, a middle school room, a high school room, a collegiate room, and a lifelong learning, which encompasses adult choirs, community choirs, religious organizations. So we invite you to stick around for 11 o'clock, because at 11 o'clock, each one of those rooms will be moderated by one of the New York ACDA board members, and they will be there carefully guiding and moderating the rooms so that fruitful discussion can happen at a very micro level between you and your colleagues from across the state or beyond. You're welcome to be here. If you're not from New York State, you will bring a wealth of information to us as well. So at 11 o'clock, you're going to unmute and have a conversation with your peers and colleagues. But right now at 10 o'clock, we invite you to sit back and enjoy the brilliance and the wit of the panelists that we have assembled for you today. It would be a great opportunity for you to also grab a piece of paper and jot down some ideas that you're getting, some questions that you have. We probably won't take questions within this 10 o'clock hour because you are going out into your discussion groups. But grab those ideas as they come at you, because if you're anything like me, I always think, I'll remember that. And seriously, 5 minutes later, can't remember a thing. So if I don't write things down, I'm completely out of luck, as many of you can attest to. So we are going to get started. I'm going to start first with introducing our wonderful panelists in no particular order. We have Dr. Andrea Moss. And Andrea, if you could unmute and say hi, you'll pop up on our screen.
Hi, here. Hello, good morning.
Good morning. We also have Ed Norris. Ed, if you can unmute and say hi.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
We have Jamie Burrett.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see you.
We have Eric Williamson
Happy Friday. Hello, hello, hello.
and Kim Duncan.
Hi, good morning, everybody.
So our five panelists are going to start us off by giving us a brief description of their own context. That means what it looks like for them at this exact very moment going back into school. We realize these things are changing so rapidly. And if you, by the way, this is my own little 2 cents here, if you are in a school district, at a university, part of a community organization right now, and you feel like everything is set in place and you don't like where it is, let me tell you, it is not set in place. These things are very movable, and I would encourage you throughout this conversation today to figure out which points of anxiety you can help push in your direction as a way to have a little bit of control over the situation. I know my own school has changed their minds 1,000 times, which I actually think is not a bad thing. They're trying to be receptive and responsive to research and not people making up science. But we'll circle back to that idea in a minute. So Ed Norris, why don't you tell us what you think is happening at the start of your school year? Go ahead.
All right. Well, again, good morning, and thanks for having me, John and Doreen. So in Glen Cove School District, where I teach at the high school level, we're doing 2 separate things. In our K to 6, we have 2 cohorts that are going Monday, Tuesday, every other Wednesday, and then the second cohort is going Thursday, Friday, and then the other Wednesday. At the secondary level, from grades 6 through 12, we are having 3 cohorts in an effort to keep less people in the school 2 days at a time. So we'll have Monday, Tuesday will be one group, Wednesday, Thursday will be another, Friday, Monday. And then we start again and we go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday. And that was in an effort to run a full schedule. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So we're running a full schedule in my district, all 9 periods, full music, the whole deal, which I'll get into later. But that's what it looks like for now in my district.
Thank you, Ed. Andrea, a little different situation.
Morning. Hi, everyone. I teach music education and choral music at the Crane School of Music. And a minute ago, I started by saying that I feel like I'm sitting in extreme position of privilege right now, in that I did have the opportunity to choose how I'll be teaching. And I just need to put that out on the onset. I think it's a unique situation and I feel very fortunate. And I know that not everybody's in this position. But I will be teaching everything remotely. I teach choral practicum, I teach a general music practicum, and I have a large choir that it's focused mostly on second year music education choral majors. So we will be doing everything remotely. All of our large ensembles are also working remotely, but the rest of our faculty had the opportunity to choose what that was going to look like. I'm experiencing that it seems like about half of our students are coming back to campus, and half of them are not. They had the opportunity to choose whether to work remotely or not. So that's what I'm doing. Definitely, reimagining things, taking the good from last semester, and there was a lot of really good stuff that came out of it, and working to build on that, trying to be imaginative and creative, since we will not be visiting your schools and practicum field experiences, and looking for ways to really design meaningful experiences and learning opportunities for kids in an online environment, since that is the reality of what all of you fine folks are doing. Trying to recreate a little bit of that and finding ways to make music in a collaborative setting as singers as well online, using some creative music strategies and other ways of being together musically. So that's where we're at.
Thank you, Andrea. For the complete opposite end of the age spectrum, Eric, can you tell us about New York City public schools, elementary style?
Yes. Oh, so much fun. Completely being sarcastic. So at PS32, which is in District 15 in New York Department of Education, as of now, we will be doing a hybrid model, meaning we'll have 3 groups of students. One group will meet every Tuesday and Wednesday. Another group will meet every Thursday and Friday, and they'll rotate on Mondays. The other group will be completely remote. And the expectation for the music teacher and other cluster teachers is pretty scary and crazy in that we are expected to cover all lunch periods and go from class to class and teach music or art or dance while students are eating with their mask off. Fun. So this is a little bit insane right now, but thankfully our administrators and superintendent are fighting very hard to come up with an alternative. But on the bright side, with Brooklyn Youth Chorus, where I'm also one of the conductors, we are completely virtual to start. And so yeah, fingers crossed that, you know, at New York City Department of Education, they are figuring it out.
We will circle back around to that. Thanks, Eric. Jamie, can you tell us what's happening out in the western part of the state?
Sure. Yeah, I'm coming from Buffalo, New York, but I teach in Lewiston Porter schools, which is north of Niagara Falls, and high school and middle school vocal. And Newport's going to be hybrid, like a lot of school districts. We are Tuesday, Wednesday, half of the district K through 12. Wednesday, Thursday, the other half of the alphabet, K through 12. Mondays will be a virtual day for all students. And we are running a virtual schedule that is slightly modified, and it's for the kids to check in synchronously with everybody on the faculty. And I love that idea actually, because it's at the beginning of the week and we can kind of set them up for when we do see you in person, what it's going to look like. And that's basically the sort of nuts and bolts of things. In terms of how much singing I'm going to do, I think that's probably for later in the hour, but working through that. I like the extra day on Monday for cleaning and all the rest of it. I feel a little bit more at ease about that in terms of personal safety. But I'm trying very, very hard to think about ways that I can do things instead of where I have been for many weeks, which is just down about what is going to be missing, you know? So I'm trying very hard to pull myself into a place of what can I do for my students in these very strange times and in this hybrid situation. And I'm getting there, but hopefully our discussion today will help us all feel a little bit less stressed about this place that we're in. But that's where we're at Newport.
Thank you, Jamie. And Kimberly.
Hi, everybody. So I teach middle school chorus and general music in the Hendrick Hudson District, which is in Upper Westchester County. Our plan at the moment, which does keep changing, as Doreen mentioned, is to do a hybrid model. We're not exactly sure what that looks like. And unfortunately, there was really no teacher input until this week. The K through 5 students in the district are going to be in the building full-time 5 days a week, with the specialists pushing in, which, as Eric mentioned, there are concerns because they still have to see every child in the building and have also now given up their space to do so. The 6 through 12 students are doing a Monday, Tuesday group in person, and then a Thursday, Friday group in person. We're not really sure how the groups are going to receive instruction when they are on their 2 days home. That hasn't been discussed yet. And Wednesday will be a cleaning day for the 6 through 12 students. Elementary does not get a cleaning day, I guess. So we're still kind of in flux trying to figure out what this means. And the way things have been going with discussions among the superintendent and the community is, I personally believe that we will be moving to a fully remote model after we've been seeing some districts in Rockland, Westchester, Dutchess, and Putnam take that model on, at least for a month or 6 weeks. So I think that's where we're headed, but we don't know for sure.
Thank you. And I'll give a short thing of what my school district is doing. The elementary schools are coming back fully in person every day. The secondary level is doing a hybrid model of half instruction. But our little special twist is that half of my students will be in the room with me and half of my students will synchronously be also receiving instruction from me through Zoom or something like that. So that being said, here's a big question for the 5 of you, and I'm going to jump a little bit out of the way and let you converse a bit here. But my question is, provided that my school district can give me the auditorium and my singers fit at a 12-foot radius, should I sing or not sing? Are you singing or not singing? Go ahead.
I guess I'll get started if you want. So we're doing, as I said before, we're dividing our school into thirds. So I'll have my chamber choir has about 40 kids this year. So on any given day, we're doing it alphabetically. On any given day, I'll have between 10 and 15 in class with me. And as Dory said, the rest will be home on Google Meet or Zoom, whatever our district is doing. So I probably will also be in the auditorium with my chamber group. My big group has 85, 90 kids this year, if enrollment holds, and we'll definitely be in the auditorium. There's no way I'll be in the choral room with them. On days like today down here in New York, lower New York on Long Island, it's a beautiful day. I'll be outside. I plan on going outside and doing a lot of rehearsing out there. My thought, is I want to kind of do a hybrid model of my curriculum. So I am going to do some singing. I'm a little nervous about it, of course. But for me personally, I want to get the kids singing. I want to get myself singing with them. They're going to be masked. My district has mandated that all students and staff be masked at all times. And if you are not masked and if you feel that you should not be masked, you can't come in the building. So that is something that makes me feel a little more comfortable, certainly. In our elementary, for you elementary folks out there, in our elementary schools, they're actually putting plexiglass barriers on every desk. I believe K to 5, they're doing that. So I was excited to hear that yesterday on a staff meeting. But so we're going to all be masked, and I also ordered shields for each one of my singers in both choirs. So when we rehearse, they'll also have shields on. So shields and masked. We're going to be 12 feet, just like Dory said. I'm actually going next week to measure and put X's where every kid can sit, and name tag cards with who can sit where, just to leave nothing up to chance. And, I will be doing some singing, but I'm also going to be doing a lot of things that, sometimes we get so wrapped up in the performance and the NYSMA majors or Allstate or whatever. Some things we don't have to do. I'm going to do critical listening. I'm going to really dive into some music theory in the choral rehearsal, which, I do a lot of, but not enough, I feel. I'm going to do a lot. I remember when we met back in June, I believe it was Kim that was talking about really checking in on our students' mental health and doing a lot of mindfulness things. I'm going to be doing a lot of that with my singers for them and for myself. I think it's important, as much anxiety as we all feel. We had a great session on Wednesday, and one of the panelists, a dear friend of mine, talked about anxiety. And I know we're all going through it, right? I know I am. And as much as we feel, our students are feeling. They're anxious, that they're excited. There's a whole lot going on. And when our kids have issues, when they need somebody to talk to, where do they go? They come to us. They come to our rooms. They come to our offices. And I think that I want to try to provide as much normalcy as we return to normal slowly for my students as possible. So as long as it is deemed safe, also in quotes, to be back in this hybrid model, I want to try to provide that for the kids and be there for the kids emotionally as well as musically. So we're going to see what happens. Obviously, we're not gearing towards a performance. A lot of colleagues have said, well, what's the payoff and things like that. And my response to that is the payoff for I hope for our kids is just being together and making music and learning, without being in front of a computer 5 days a week. When we broke in March 13th down here on Long Island, there was no sense of finality. We went to this virtual model, and it was terrible for everybody involved, I think. and so to be able to get back, albeit in a very, very altered setting, it's a step, and I'm trying to remain positive in realizing it's a step forward in, again, a slow return to normalcy. So that's kind of where I'm at personally.
That is amazing that you have those resources for your students and you have space to have your rehearsals, because I'm in a completely different situation where we do not have access to facilities or even space to space out singers. So at my school, I am definitely not singing in person. I mean, our students aren't even allowed to move in the building. Like the classes that they will be in for 5.5 hours the entirety of the school day, and I'll be pushing in to rooms. So for me, the thing about I'm so glad you brought up mindfulness, because that's how I'm centering how I'm going to be approaching teaching music, and let alone chorus. Everything will be done from home. It is not safe for them to sing in person, and it won't be safe until there's a vaccine. And going back into the school, just realizing that it's going to be traumatizing for the students as well as myself. And, I'd rather build upon the virtual learning that was our new norm back in March than try to adapt to this hybrid model that they haven't really fully fleshed out as an effective way for us to be safe, or the students to be safe. So why would I, on top of that, try to add a new norm for music when they just finally got settled into virtual learning? I'd rather, work on making that more efficient, making that more normal for them, and in a safe way. Like I know they're not going to get sick by singing in front of a computer screen. Is it ideal? Of course not. But at the same time, that is normal for them. And what's not going to be normal is being in a space with their friends where they have to socially distance and learn and not even have contact with me as a teacher, let alone sing songs or play instruments. Still figuring out how I'm going to do that. So I think it's important that I don't overwhelm students at the elementary age, but I even feel like at the college and high school, middle school level too, there's still a level of like uncertainty and trauma that they're going to be experiencing. So I'm very hesitant, and I would encourage all of us to kind of consider that, because it's just going to be so different that I think we should kind of wait before we hop into the things that we want to do, like singing and things of that nature. Just because no one has ever experienced education, let alone music education, through this lens or in this context. But if you have the space and you can be outside and you have access to your auditorium, I know I don't, because it's been transferred into a learning space that'll accommodate 2 to 3 classes that'll fit 12 to 15 kids apiece. So auditorium, not a thing for me. Outside, have you seen New York City? We're kind of all on top of each other. So that's not a thing as well. So, I'm just going to make lemonade out of lemons and, provide them with a lot more mindfulness, cross-curricular learning while I'm in person, a lot more movement-based, move within your square of your desk types of things for them, because singing, that's not a thing. And I'm very anxious going back to teach music and singing at my school, because they're so used to a very interactive, social, collaborative space. And this is just going to be a completely different, almost depressing way of approaching it. And I'm also not ready for it yet, to actually be in the space and not being able to interact and be as hands-on with my kids as I used to be. So yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Eric, your kids are so lucky to have you, and you've got such a great outlook on how to make it work. I agree 100% when you say, we've got to ease into it, because, we're all scared, and the kids are going to be so apprehensive, and it's not like we're going to have the whole group or the whole GM or whatever in person every day. As Dory said, half the group, or in my case, 2/3 of the group are online. So every day you've got to take the temperature of the room. And what we do as educators, we have our plan, and how many times, does a kid raise the hand or ask a question, or something happens in rehearsal and you got to take a hard left. We always have to take the temperature of the room and adjust on the fly. And I think what you said, Eric, about really easing into it could not be more true. You know, we really got to balance it and take the temperature of our kids and see how they feel. I mean, there might be one day I come in and I want to do a listening example and we're analyzing, you know, something by the Hofstra University Choir, the Syracuse University Choir. And, you know, somebody comes in, you see what I did there, Doreen and John. And a kid comes in and, you know, their father, their mother, their grandpa, their brother, somebody's got it or somebody passed, and then everything changes. So, you know, and we have to be there and be mindful of that too. So Eric, I appreciate, you know, what you're going through and love what you said there.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I just want to jump in. The stress is definitely real. The thing that keeps going through my head through this process is I want to set up what I do with my students in a way that makes them feel as safe as possible and me as safe as possible. And I just don't ever want to feel like somehow a decision I made put a student at risk or they came down with COVID. And so for me, I'm right with you, Ed. I'm going to be outside singing as long as possible. I just think that's the best way to do it right now. I mean, research-wise and the rest. And if you are able, that's what we're going to do. I also was very inspired by the reading session we had in June with the wonderful guests that came in and talked to us about music from different parts of the world, some just really wonderful choral pieces. And so I'm going to be working on talking to my students about different types of singing from different parts of the world as part of what I do. And that's the days that we won't be singing. And I can't wait for that because I feel like I'm going to learn so much. And I feel kind of like this is something I should have been doing more of. And so maybe a silver lining is like we're getting a chance to totally rethink what we do. And that can be really good for our profession. You know what I mean? And so I'm going to be doing units on different styles of singing from the world. And then I'm going to try and bring, which was suggested like in that June meeting, I'm going to bring people in to talk to my students through Zoom about what this type of singing is about, whether it's gospel or spirituals or whatever. And I think that will be super informative to me and to them and will work to help us when we do go back to normal and we sing that repertoire in more normal circumstances. And I hope to also expand that to bring in some guests that are opera singers or musical theater people or choral conductors and like talk and expand my students' like knowledge of what this musical profession is that we are part of as teachers, but what else is possible out there and let them kind of dive into these incredible, you know, opportunities and hear from some very talented people that might inspire them in different ways. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm going, but the singing thing is very nervous. I would be interested in hearing feedback from others, especially when we get into the breakout room about how you're handling that when you are singing. Certainly I'll be doing 12 feet. The odd may not be available to me, but maybe the gym is. And honestly, that's great. If it gets cold and we're in the gym, whatever. So flexibility. And I'm happy because I feel like I'm starting to get to a point where I'm at ease a bit more with this is what it is. So you just need to take some time to find what excites you and build a new curriculum around it. So that's kind of where I am. And I really appreciate your words, Eric. I'm amazed at what you're able to do in that kind of a setting. And I hope that you're able to feel like you're meeting your students' needs. But we're all gonna have to just think about how we do that differently, so.
Doreen, you asked if you should be singing, if your students should be singing. I think that all of our students should be singing. I don't know that they're able to be singing all together in person in a room with one another. You know, and I'm not really a huge fan of like sort of halfway options. It's like, well, if we're 12 feet, then we can hum. But if we're 10 feet, we probably can't like, I can't get my head around that. You know, but I think that there are a lot of ways, and I think we actually really have an obligation to find ways to prompt and create opportunities for our students to sing. And even if that's when they're at home and in other spaces, that's fine. And if we do have a chance to be together with them in person, and we're doing other things in those moments and exploring creative strategies and listening and talking and thinking about music in other ways, but encouraging them to, when they're at home, do a warm-up sequence with them, get their body standing up and moving and singing and using their voices and all of those things. Because we have to keep remembering, I think, that like our students are in chorus because this is their way of interacting with the world. This is how they understand themselves and the world around them. And the physiological component of being a singer and what you get from that, just physically and emotionally, from actually going through the motions and having those frequencies vibrate through your body, is actually a very real neurological stimulus, and we can't forget that. And they went from doing that every single day, like all day long, to just like stop. Right? And I think that for so many of us is the source of a lot of anxiety too. So if we can find ways to set them up and, safe ways to get them singing. And I mean, what better way to help them also learn to become more aware, independent musicians and singers than to get them involved in that process. What are some warm-ups that you can do on your own? What is this good for? What is it that you're listening for when you do that siren and that slide? Where do you feel your break? Where does your voice change? Where does your head voice change? All those kinds of things. Like, we could do those in person, but also to be doing them at home and on their own. And then I do not get paid from Soundtrap. I do not work for Soundtrap, but I will tell you that it is absolutely the best resource, I think, right now for singers to get together in an online collaborative space and make music and sing together somewhere, where they can work synchronously on a piece of music together, record their parts, have to go back and really listen to it, listen to each other's part. They're making their own arrangements of songs, right? And finding public domain music and putting up the PDFs and letting them figure out, okay, there's 6 people in my ensemble. And by the way, I also play the flute, so I'm going to play this thing, so there really can be musicians. And I think we have to take that path. What are all the ways that we can encourage them to sing and be musicians? I don't know that happens in person next to each other yet, but that's my 2 cents on that. Had a really interesting conversation with my ACDA collegiate group, who wants to continue to run their lab choir in a virtual setting. And so I'm happy to talk about that more, but they did some really brilliant work of sort of unpacking all the things that they can do, and trying to problem solve the things that needed to be different in that setting. Really interesting. But anyway, I'll be quiet now.
So, Doreen, to answer your question of whether we're singing or not, my short answer is I don't know yet. And there are a lot of pieces to the puzzle that I don't know in order to make that decision. One being, our ensembles can be, at least in my building, up to, the largest one I've had is 65. So even half of that, anywhere from 30 to 35 students in my room, I don't know if I can space out 12 feet, even 6 feet. The other piece of the puzzle that we don't know yet is our school has offered a 100% remote option, and we don't know how many students are taking that. So that 30 could come down to 10. It could be all 30, it could be 3. I also don't know who's teaching that remote option. So I don't know if I have to be in charge of providing lessons for both. I'm really not sure. The other piece of the puzzle is that our auditorium, which we've been begging to be renovated because it's from 1969, is under construction this year. So it's completely off the table at our high school as well. So those spaces are unfortunately not able to be used. I loved what James said about guest artists. I was having the same idea. We have so many artist friends that are out of work right now. that even virtually can come on and speak about the audition process or different careers in music besides performing, you know, music production, stage management. I mean, all these amazing musical professions that they might not discover otherwise, that we don't usually have time to introduce because we're preparing for our concerts or competitions. The other thing is, I know Ed Reisert's on this call, and one lovely NYSMA workshop that he did, I don't remember if it was last summer or the year before, where he talked about the fact that we are the voice teachers of these students, not just the choir teachers, but for many of our choral students, we are their only voice teachers. So any singing that I do, I believe right now, I would like to save that for at home and really focus on vocal technique. Like Andrea was saying, feeling what that feels like in your voice without having to worry about what your peers are doing next to you. You know, everybody's going to be on mute. You can do whatever the heck you want, whether it sounds good, bad, experiment. Our classrooms are the classrooms where we encourage people to feel safe enough to make mistakes and to take risks. And I think doing that at home is even more of an opportunity for them to do so because they don't have anybody really hearing them. And in school, I'll devote more time to theory, lyric text analysis, the background of the composer, the background of the arranger, of the poet who wrote the piece, the text. You know, there are so many things that we touch on during the school year, but, you know, not as in depth as we would like to because we always have that deadline. One other thing for us is when we do this 2-day in, 2-day out model, we are going to be on a block schedule so that students are not traveling from 8 classes in one day. It will only be 4. But what that means is we have an 80-minute ensemble rehearsal. So 80 minutes is great, but if you can't sing, it's almost like torturous. So I think the more mini lessons we can do to break it up, the better. And like Ed was saying about mindfulness, that's something that I incorporated in my class pre-pandemic. It was Mindfulness Monday. And, you know, it could be, let's do a breathing activity. Let's read this quote. Let's just talk about how we feel today. And it became something that just we looked forward to on Mondays and expected, and it translated into our online classes as well. So I think there's a lot that we can do without singing. I would love to sing, but again, I don't want to, as James said, I don't want to make my students feel uncomfortable or unsafe. And I really don't want to be the person that's in charge of deciding, are we far enough apart or not? That's a lot of pressure for me. And I'm also feeling a lot of pressure regarding the masks because for some reason, part of our plan says that masks are only required if you can't socially distance. And that makes me really, really nervous and really scared. And I will be having a discussion with our administrators right after this meeting, actually, to ask them if they will support my decision to have a student leave the room if they refuse to wear their mask. Because if that's not in our plan, I don't really have a leg to stand on with parents who want to argue with me about it. So I really want to make sure that that is in writing, that we can enforce that in the music classroom because it is such a high risk. So my head's all over the place, but I think we all have lots of good ideas and we have to think outside the box. Our students didn't sign up for chorus because when they were a toddler, they wanted to just sing in choir. No, it's because they like to sing, like Andrea was saying. So as long as we can keep them singing, I think that's what we need to do right now, and to maintain the relationship that we have with them so that when this goes back to somewhat normal, we still have them. We still have them in our classes and they're still interested and they still want to be with us. So that's where we are.
I'm going to jump in and segue us a little bit here. And Kim, that was a really nice setup for this. As I looked down my list of things that we wanted to talk about, and it's 10:40 because life is fascinating and time is bizarre these days. And I look and I see curricular implications, instruction practices, social emotional well-being. We've touched upon those things a little bit. And in fact, when we break out at 11 o'clock into the different Zoom groups, I think that's a really great opportunity for people to share more specifics for curricular ideas and for practical instruction things that are going to happen. So I would like to segue into a bit of what Kim was just talking about, and I'd like to talk about advocacy and politics, because I think that in your discussion rooms that you should really get to some teaching and learning things, but I think for the large group that this might be a really great opportunity to talk about something that affects us all equally. So I will set it up this way and say, I feel like in my own district that I am the only person reading some of the research that I'm reading, and that's super scary. And I also work in a place, I'll say this delicately, that has a very strong sense of hierarchy. So I do what I'm told, I'll say that. But I had a little crisis the other day because I realized people that are above me are making a lot of decisions based on information that it sounds like is not aligned with the stuff that I've been reading. And I realized you can find things to say anything, right? So I'm taking it upon myself to create a little mini lit review from the information that our music peers in the aerosol study coming out of Boulder and University of Maryland and Cincinnati. I'm taking that information and compiling it, and I'm going to share it with my administrators and my union president. And by discussing that, especially with my union president, I've noticed that he's started taking on some of the language that I'm using, and he's talking about aerosols, and he's talking about masking and ventilation and room breathing and things that I hadn't heard him say before. And it's only because I kind of got in his space and started talking to him about it. So I have pointedly become political about my decisions to advocate for my students in a different way, by saying I have some information about singing in aerosols that I don't think that my administrators are aware of. And so I've brought that to them. So my question for the panel is, what ideas do you have for all of us at whatever level that will help us advocate for our programs and or help advocate for the safety of our students based on the singing research that we have been presented with in our music bubble? I'll toss that out to anybody.
I'll go first if you don't mind. I happen to be the music department leader for our district as well, and I would suggest to everybody to reach out to that person as you're in between, to make sure that administration is hearing our content specific needs and concerns. That, for us it's a double whammy. Every other teacher is nervous about going back in, but they're still able to teach their content. Like for us, it's twofold. I would also reach out to union reps to make sure that whoever's on those school safety committees is making themselves aware of our specific needs. I think that in general, if you can make sure that the building staff, custodians, administration, union people, everybody needs to be aware that we have specific needs that are specific to music. I feel like I'm saying the same thing 3 different ways, but they don't know what they don't know. It's our job to educate them and to do the research and to share. So yeah, the more people know, the better. The parents should know. Everybody should know. And it's not like it's a secret, but I feel like for us, we're seeing it everywhere. We're seeing it on our social media feeds, but that's because of who we're following. We have to make sure that people that are not in this field are aware of the research as well. And yeah, Doreen, if you can share that with everybody, that would be fantastic.
Happy to do that.
Kim, I'm in the exact same boat as you. I serve as the liaison for one of the 2 in our department. And I was in a meeting with our superintendent and assistant superintendent back in early July. And they looked at me and said, so what does choir look like in the fall? And I said, so what do you think choir looks like in the fall? That's your decision. But the truth of the matter is, they really don't know because, as you said, this isn't their bag. And we have such a specific set of needs. So I had a meeting with my principal earlier this week and just laid out what band needs, what orchestra needs, what choir needs. And of course, a lot of those things overlapped. but this is what we need to come back safely, to keep our students safe, to keep us safe. Whether we're singing, whether we're not singing, whether we're playing, we need to keep our kids safe, because unfortunately in my district, and I hate to say this, and James and Kim, you both touched on this, I feel like the music teachers are making the decisions as to how it's going to look, and that it's a scary thing, and it's something that literally keeps me up with anxiety at night. And so when I went back at my principal, of course in a positive way, the other day, and I said, look, this is what we need. You want music. You said the kids need our music. You want them to have music. This is what we need, based on the studies that are out so far, to keep us safe. So having that dialogue and not being afraid. I know maybe some of us are untenured. That might be a little scary. In that case, you've got to go to your point person. You've got to go, to a colleague that you trust that can advocate for you. But we have to advocate for ourselves. In many instances, there's no one else to do it for us. And we have to keep ourselves, our families that we go home to every night, and our students and their families safe. And that's a lot of pressure. So keep that dialogue open. And as Doreen said, union president, administrators, you have to advocate for yourselves.
Yeah, I think Doreen, you're right about how this looks different depending on what your school district is and how they have been informed or not. But I think what's coming through my mind is we're not alone in this as teachers. We need to really rely on each other to help get the resources to our administrators. Erie County had a working group of teachers that did a fantastic job of compiling all this research together into a Google Slides presentation. And that's been shared up in my county. And we made a point to make sure that all of our administrators had that. And then we followed up with them. And they were very appreciative, actually, when we did that, to have this in one place where they could look at it as they were making decisions around music. And it actually turned in, for our school district, it had turned into a request for a list from the music department. What do you need? So they could, they couldn't guarantee that they could get everything for us, but K through 12, band, orchestra, choir, I put in a request for singers' masks. They're not, I don't know if I'll get them, but I'm just gonna put it out there. But I think that happened because, as you were all advocating, we took the initiative to work with our administration. And I think they want that. They have so many decisions going on. They're overwhelmed that I think a little help helps them feel more confident in the decisions they make. And then we get put into the process when we do that, and our voices get heard a bit more. But we're not alone. We just need to try and support each other. And I would also say, this is not the time to be a delicate flower. I would say we need to be really willing to put ourselves out there and have that meeting and be very honest and say, look, you're putting me in a position where I feel like I'm deciding whether my kids are healthy. And I don't feel, in order for me to do what I do, you need to help support me so that we can collectively feel comfortable moving forward. So I would say, just if it's not in your personality, find who in your department chairs who can be very, very aggressive, maybe almost, and insistent on the conversation happening.
There is that double-edged sword, though, and I see Brad is talking about it in the chat, though. There's a little tightrope that you have to walk, though, because the more dangerous they think it is, the more they have a reason to cut the program. So it's this really delicate balance of advocating, but also making sure that it's not so dangerous where, well, then we don't need it. So that's a lot of pressure as well, as figuring out where the breaking point is. And I'm really sorry to hear that about Brad's district. But I think also having these conversations among ourselves and knowing what other districts are doing is great to tell our administration, here's what I'm seeing being done on Long Island. Here's what I'm seeing over in Rochester. That's really great too, because we have nothing else to compare it to other than each other, because it hasn't been done before. So I think these conversations need to be happening, and we need to be documenting who's doing what and using that as evidence to cite.
Doreen?
Really, oh, yes, go ahead.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
I
I
was
was hostess. I was going to ask you if there's any value in us. You mentioned sort of collecting like a lit review. Is there any value for us having one sort of collective site where we can have talking points on advocacy for our programs and the reason why music still needs to continue, and the ways, you know, I heard Ed say, you know, somebody asked, what's the payoff? Like, we always have to translate what we do for everybody else, you know, to help them understand that. And this is just another very extreme version of that, unfortunately, and it's absolutely exhausting. And so for us to all be doing it in our own bubbles seems like a huge waste of energy, especially right now. So, I mean, if we can pool those resources and say, here are the talking points for, yes, for advocating to continue your programs and the reason why music has to continue to exist, and for all the reasons we know, but maybe people don't understand how it happens if you can't sing in person. But then all the reasons why Shoshana and Jared, and yes, everybody is saying that, yes, this is a public health issue, and separate that from the music component and be able to advocate for our students for safety reasons at the same time. Those things are very hard. It's hard enough for us to hold both of those realities in our head at the same time. So like the cognitive dissonance is overwhelming. So we have to help each other sort those thoughts out, but then unfortunately take all of the time and energy it requires to explain that to other people.
So I can offer a couple of resources here. The New York ACDA Facebook group is a closed group. I invite you all to share your resources. Like Jamie, if you could share that slides presentation there, that would be amazing. I think at this point, that's a good place to kind of have information be dumped. If you are not on Facebook, we can, I'm saying this, he's gonna hate me, but Jared Berry, who's amazing and does so much for the organization, we will brainstorm ways to get some resources onto the New York ACDA webpage. The board can take on that responsibility. But in the short term, if you do have things, please, we welcome you to share that on the New York ACDA Facebook page. There's also an Instagram, that's not the same venue for sharing clearinghouse things, but yes, it does feel like I'm doing a lot of work and somebody else has already done a lot of work, but I also know that some people don't have the means or the wherewithal to do, or the time to do some of this work. So if some of us can do it and kind of collaborate and get it neat and tidy and keep reworking it into something that's more and more beautiful and usable, we can do that. I think, Andrea, what I was going to say before is that so much of what people understand choirs to be is that, you know, 90 kids standing on risers in a dark auditorium singing our beautiful songs, and we have to bring it to something bigger than that. And we know it's something bigger than that, but we've done a really bad job of explaining that prior to the pandemic to people. Whatever sort of advocacy you can, you know, even if you have your kid, this is a little after the fact, but in the spring, I had my kids do the Be a Historian exercise, and I had them in that moment, like actually be a historian and write down what choir felt like to them and what they got from choir and what benefits they had from being in choir, because they were like really close to that memory. And I had them write it down. So now I have 150 documents from students explaining what choir is, and I can use that for my superintendent going forward. Maybe in the fall, if you haven't done something like that, that might not be a bad writing exercise, which is, what do you remember about that you love about singing and being in choir, and what does it bring it to you? And you can compile those sorts of things. That's one of those real bits of information that's local and it has more value because it's the actual kids in your school district when you're going to your administrators. But yeah, it's all so much, right? It's so much. So on that happy note, now that I'm completely depressed again. Okay, it's fine, it's good. Because I'm not depressed because we're all here together. Don't laugh at me, Lauren. We are all here together and we are in this together and we're gonna continue to be in this together. So on that note, let's break apart and not be together. Get it? It's a joke. Okay, so at the very beginning, oh, John Warren, you are the bestest. In the chat right this very second, John has given you a website. If you click on that, you will see the different Zoom invitations for the rooms. Again, you're welcome to go to whatever room you want to go to. This, much like I said on Wednesday, this is not the end of our conversation. This is just a place for us to be at. I encourage you to find buddies, find friends, find colleagues, use New York ACDA as a larger venue to connect with people. We are all in this together and we're gonna be okay. We just really, everybody needs to chip in the way that they can chip in. So your voices matter to us and we wanna hear you right now. So you can consider which one of the groups you want to be in. And again, does everybody see in the chat, that's where the link is? John and I will stay on this Zoom so that that's live for the next couple of minutes. If you're having technical problems, pop back onto the Zoom here and John and I can talk to you. But we would love to see you be part of those conversations. And we would like to say thank you to our wonderful panelists, Eric, Andrea, Kimberly, Jamie, and Ed. You guys are amazing and inspiring and I'm grateful to know all of you. So thank you. If you are a moderator, you can go ahead and open your Zoom rooms. And everybody else, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can email us at the board. You can Facebook us, give us a call, text, I don't know, scream loudly. We'll hear you. We're here to help and we want to be connected to you. So thank you all for being here and have fun in your Zoom rooms. Bye.
Thank you, Doreen.
You're welcome. Thanks, Ed. Go.
So Sean, I saw a couple of you just join right at the end. I think you're looking for the breakout rooms. If you go to the chat, just in the last couple of posts, I posted the link to the breakout room. So if you just go to that website, and you're welcome to stay on this call while you do it, make sure you get there.
I think it's not allowing me to see any chat from before I joined.
Oh, let me repost.
Thank you.
We'll get you on, no worries.
Good to see you all.
Thanks for being here. Wish I was at the opera.
Did that work?
Yeah, this is just my backyard here.
Yeah, it's great.
Did that work?
All right, thanks for that, John. I'll click on that now.
You bet.
John, you can stop the recording probably.
Good idea.